we gotta get our head out of the sand and realize the shape that this pension system is in the state of Alabama. Now, let me tell you people something. The legislature should be putting in a little over 220, 240 million a year. We put it in approximately $1 billion a year in the pension program. Look what that money could be spent for. Takes $100 million to give teachers a 3% raise. We could have given you a 15% raise 8 years ago and funded it all 8 years going forward. But that money, you didn't get that money. Now this year, a group of us sat down and we decided, by the way, there are only 7 or 8 states out of the 50 that are funding the unfunded liability, which is $15 billion in Alabama. And friends, that's a lot of money for the taxpayers of Alabama to have to overcome. You people gonna make that up. It's gotta be paid. You know, I'm a firm believer that if you own the pension program, you deserve what you've been promised. And the legislature is gonna guarantee that you get what you've been promised. But where are we gonna get the money? We don't know. But, you know, we could, we talking about amount, we got, if you combine the two budgets, you got $7.5 billion. We talking about additional amount of money 8 years in a row, which is equal to 10% of the combination of those two budgets. $750 million a year that we taking from education and from the general fund, and we're putting in the pension program. Now let me tell you, some of us thought that we could continue this for 10 or 12 years and we'd be back on our feet. We found out today that it's 50 years, at least 50 years down the road. We also found out we didn't got to put $1 billion in a year. We got to go to $5 billion a year. Now where are we going to get that money? Look what $1 billion is doing to us. And you people, you know, need to stop getting mad at us about pensions. Legislature didn't get the pension program in the shape that it's in. Y'all know in 2007, 8, 9 in there, the whole economy went down. That's why your pension program went down. It wasn't only Alabama's, it was most states' pension program went down. But the fact is, we have got to come up with the money to fund it. The only way we've got of coming up with that money today is taking it from the existing budgets. And then we wondered why we're not getting any pay raises. Like I said a while ago, a group of us this year sat down and said, we're not going to fund it this year. We're going to give a pay raise. And we looked at the $15 billion that we owe, and we decided, no, we can't do that. We've got to take that money that could be going in you people's pockets, and we got to put it into the pension program. So we did. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen going forward. And we can't continue. The plan we got is not working. It's never going to work. Let me tell you an example. In 1988, the legislature of Alabama, after they had paid a lot of money to get a program put together, the pension people had. You got an actuary firm out of Kennesaw, Georgia, back in County, that handles it for the state. They put a plan together. The legislature, in its wisdom, sat down one day and the plan said they got to make 8% profit each year and you got to work for 30 years. The legislature sat down one day and changed the word 30 to 25 and changed nothing else. From that day forward, it was gone. And that's where we are today. And, but we're not blaming it all on Dr. Bronner. You know, we're not blaming anything on him. He can come back to us. He can mention that. He can mention drop. Drop costs $2 billion right off the top of the pension program. The last unfunded COLA that the legislature gave cost $6 billion, and $2 additional billion has not been paid. That's $8 billion. And then we criticize Dr. Bronner and his group for not having the money stable. And, you know, the legislature played a major role in that. But we got a problem. And we can either face it now, or somewhere down the road, somebody's going to be retiring and there's no money to get your check out.
I think this is where we might disagree, man. You know, I was on the PAC board, the PACT board, and we had actuarial people come in and they told us how the program was going to go defunct in 10 years. The next year we come in and we have a new group come in, there's some new actuarial people, and they come in and they tell us, hey, the program's good for 30 years. You know, it's all according to who's doing the math and who's doing the numbers. I do know this. I know that Dr. David Bronner has a track record. I know that he has a track record of some failures in the stock market, some success, but I do know one thing. The teacher pension system has been in place, it's been effective, and it's been funded by the state, and it's no different than Hodges and Ford Insurance in Greenbow City, Alabama, that I am the employer, I have employees, I have to participate in their pension for them to have a pension. The state of Alabama is the employer, the educators are the employees. So we have to, as a legislature, participate in your pension. Now, if we do away with your pension and turn it to a 401k, we're gonna do away with a lot of educators. If we don't have any educators, we're not gonna have an education system. I'm just telling you, they're gonna flock across state lines faster than you can go get a lottery ticket. The drop program, I sponsored bills, numerous bills, to lower the drop limit to $99,900 for you to be able to participate in. I'm a firm believer in the drop program. I think the drop program kept some of our most experienced and trained teachers in the classroom from them getting vested in their retirement. And for example, where I live on the eastern side of the state, and retiring and then going straight across to Rome, Georgia, drawing a second retirement. We'd invest in them, we'd train them, we'd send them to all these seminars and classes and get them national teacher certified, and then after they got their retirement, they were gone. So it was an incentive for them to stay. Yes, and a few people take advantage of it, they sure did. But can we fix it? We sure can. Do we need to eliminate the program altogether? Absolutely not. So I think we need to, I'm telling you right now, classroom sizes are bigger than they've ever been since 2009. They're bigger than they've ever been. If you continue to increase classroom sizes, affect educators' benefits, make them put 2.5% more back into their benefit package, and you don't continue to give them a raise, people are going to you're not, whoever asked the question earlier, I'm thinking about going into education, I advise you not to. Not right now with this legislature in place. So I'm just telling you right now, I've talked to the chairman of the Education Budget Committee. We're going to have a banner year. The Education Trust Fund, the general fund doesn't rate the ETF. There is ample money to take care of the pension plan and also to give an 8% pay raise. The money's there. It's just according. It's all about priorities. It's according to what your priorities are. So that's just my point.
I'm in agreement on the pay raise. This year I was for a pay raise. I was for taking that $1 billion that we've taken out of the box and putting in the other box and giving you folks a pay raise. But, most folks didn't agree with that, because what you're doing, you're taking money and giving it to you as a pay raise that should be going into your retirement. Now, what we've got to decide, and by the way, I talked to a group over in Florida recently, a young man in his late 20s said, I'm not worried about retirement, I'm worried about feeding my wife and my 3 kids, That's a good thought. But the fact is, the money, the additional money we are putting in retirement, we gotta face it, folks, it's your money, it's your money. If we could give it to you in a pay raise, you get out here and spend it, you'd help the economy. But when we dump it into the deep hole over there where it's been lost, let me give you these figures. You had 45 billion, you got 30 billion left. Everybody remember those figures. You're down $15 billion, and the taxpayer in Alabama has got to come up with that $15 billion. Now, where are we going to get it? First thing we do, we can put in a 15% property tax statewide. That'll give us $750 million a year. We can raise the state sales and use tax 1.5%. That'll give us $750 million a year. Or some of us, we've been looking at floating some bonds. If the state of Alabama could float $15 billion in bonds, and if at 3% interest, and then if they could turn around and make 8% profit, we'd do good. But even if they only made 3%, we'd be breaking even. Let me point out, now 2 years in a row, 13 and 14, they made the 8%. They got to make the 8% on 45 billion, not on the 30 billion left. They made 12.1 last year on 30 billion, which equates to 8% on 45 billion. They give us the figures this morning. This past year, they made 1%. Now they got 8% is $3.6 billion, and they only made 1%. So they lost something like $3.2 billion. It's going to be added to the $15 billion. And we're not blaming anybody. Let's just lay the facts, the true facts on the table and talk about it. The pension program is not a sacred cow that nobody can discuss. The legislature discusses it. We discuss the Medicaid, we discuss prisons, but the press just does a backflip if you ever mention the pension program. And friends, the day and time has come when you better mention it.
Well, there's a piece of legislation that was passed in the last 6 years that took the AEA associate off of the retirement board and became a governor appointee. I say let's give the board and the retirement system and the and then the board back to the educators. And there continues to be legislation to take the educators off of their board. It's your money. I think you ought to decide how it's handled.
Yes.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Common Core. All right. It says, this question, does Alabama use a version of Common Core? And they do. And it says, what way are our state level standards for education achievement objectives determined?
I'll start off on that. The state of Alabama uses the Alabama College and Career Ready Standards, which is Alabama's version of the Common Core. There is no one's being sleight of hand and trying to switch the name up. I know that has been insinuated over the years that there was some kind of bait and switch by changing the name, but it is Alabama's version. The Common Core is the standards that we have set for the state that we believe best prepare our students to be college and career ready. By definition, when we say college and career ready, we mean able to get out of high school and go into college without having to take remedial courses, college ready. Career ready, able to get out of high school with some type of credentialing or certification that says, I do X well, whatever the chosen career field is for that student. Ms. Lee and I were talking about this before we came out here. The standards in the state of Alabama were not on par with standards in most states in this country. There's a test that's given every other year called the NAEP, the National Assessment for Educational Progress. It's the single test that's given nationally that's considered the nation's report card. It's the single assessment that every state takes every 2 years, every fourth, a random sampling of 4th and 8th graders take reading and math every 2 years to see where we stand. I pulled some numbers before I came here tonight, back to the 90s, 98 or something like that. And in those assessments, Alabama has nationally come in 49th, 50th, 47th. We waver around there in math and not much different in reading nationally. That has been the case for a long time. A lot of people who oppose Common Core, my question is, if you get rid of Common Core, you go back to what? To what we have traditionally, historically proven did not work. We looked at standards that other states use. We don't want the standards to be identical because there are unique points to it that Alabama educators, Alabama teachers and professors had their input when we came up with the standards, but no one wants academic standards that aren't good beyond the boundaries of their own state. I want my children, when they graduate from high school, I hope they stay in Alabama. I love this state, but if they choose to go to Wyoming or California or Texas or anywhere else, I want the education that they receive in Alabama to be on par with the education that other students receive in other parts of the country and in other parts of the world. There are so many misconceptions about Common Core, and I think that some bad things happen. I think that this is my personal opinion. I think that the federal administration made a mistake when they tied money to it, because then you got all the rumors about it's a federally controlled course of study that's trying to brainwash people into all these other. Most of them are very, very nonsensical. Now there are some good points too. I'm not saying that anyone who opposes Common Core is flatly wrong, and any educational reform is going to have some good points and bad points to it. But we are trying to get our students on par with other students across the country. And all Common Core is saying, when people get standards and curriculum mixed up, standards is just saying you should know, by the time you're in the 8th grade, you should know X, Y, Z. And it's just math and English language arts that we've implemented here in the state of Alabama. It's not history and social studies and science and all these other things. But there should be some commonality. I came from Boston, Massachusetts. When I moved down south, whether I moved from Boston to Alabama or someone moves from Alabama to Boston, we should be on the same level in terms of what we know and what grade level. How that's taught is a local decision. There was a lot of hoopla last year about this, the book list and books that must be used and all that. There's no list of books that you have to use in Common Core. There's a list of books that are available, grade level books that are available to use if a local school system decides to use those books. They're not mandated to read anything. All of these things, I think, get mischaracterized, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people are quick to run and demonize things that are new. Our NAEP scores came out this year, and the entire nation, pretty much every state in the country except for Mississippi, almost surprisingly, no disrespect to Mississippi, but almost every state in the country dropped a little bit. Alabama stayed where we were. We didn't gain any, but we didn't lose any either. It's going to take the math Common Core standards were implemented in the 12-13 school year, and the English language arts came a year after that. There's no magic bullet, and it's the analogy is turning education around is more like turning a cruise liner, not a speedboat. It's slow and gradual. It happens, and it will happen in time. But there's nowhere, in my opinion, there's nowhere to go back to. Moving forward with Common Core standards, or whatever, any kind of standard, but we know what the standards that we had us. We know the standards that we've been using for a long time are not on par with the rest of the country, so we have to do something to make sure that our students are prepared for college and career once they get out of high school.
Let me throw these other two questions, because this ties in exactly with what you're talking about. Has Alabama accepted any federal funds in conjunction with adopting Common Core? And also, you were talking about test scores, and the question here was, why is the curriculum not improving scores?
Alabama, that's another huge misconception. The state of Alabama has not received any money from Common Core from the federal government. None at all. We did, there was the money that I talked about was called Race to the Top. The Obama administration tied that. But actually, Common Core was in long before the Obama administration got in place. It came in under President Bush. When Obama got to the White House, he said, hey, this looks like a pretty good idea. I'll put some money behind it. And initially, people thought that was a good idea. But I think it tainted the waters a little bit. As a matter of fact, we did apply for Race to the Top money. We did not receive a penny of it. Thankfully, yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20. When we applied for it, obviously we thought it was in the height of the recession. That's when surplus packages and all that was coming out, and everyone was concerned about how we're going to make ends meet. But in hindsight, we're glad we didn't get that money. So no one can accuse Alabama of adjusting our standards or our curriculum because we're paid to do so. We've not received any money. If anyone can prove or show what we have, I'd like to see it, because our schools and our teachers haven't seen it, and certainly the State Department of Education hasn't seen it. But there's no money. In terms of the test scores turning around, we think that it will, but it's too early to tie any causal reference between the implementation of college and career-ready standards and how we're performing on national assessments just yet. Most of the research that I've seen says it takes 5 or 6 years before you begin to see a shift in assessments as a result of an educational reform like that, and it's just brand new. Literally, 2012 and 13, and 13 and 14 were the years we implemented math and English language arts, and the jury's still out on that. We just don't know. Our hope is that these new standards will bring our kids up to par. You hear a lot of criticism saying it's hard, it's too hard, my kids can't do it, it's too hard. And the fact of the matter is, it is different, some parts of it. It is hard, but kids in 46 other states are doing it. And we don't want our kids to be an educational island unto ourselves where our kids don't know the stuff that kids in Maryland and Wyoming and California do. So it's going to be a difficult change. Growth is always difficult, sometimes it's painful. We do hope that the assessment scores will begin to increase over the years once the implementation of the new standards take hold, but that has not happened yet.
I'll address one thing. Common Core has become just a political football. We need to let educators do their job, and we need to let the Department of Education do their job. So I don't think you want legislators in Montgomery that get elected to go to Montgomery and decide what type of curriculum you're going to have. Let's let the educators decide. Let's just be careful when we ask the question about federal funds. Have you taken any federal funds? I think Representative Greer said earlier, the general fund budget with Medicaid, You know, everybody says we want states' rights. We want to separate the state from the country. We don't want any money from the feds. You know, let's refresh our memory. Alabama's a taker state. For every dollar we send to DC, we get $3 back. When you go out on that highway, 80% of it is funded by federal money. Our public school system, you know, back in 2008, I think Representative Williams, Representative Greer, we were all serving together. Without the bailout money that we received from the federal government, we would have been a travesty. Under Speaker Hammond's leadership, we decided to take the money and divide it over 2 years so we could be able to fund our budgets, and that's the only way we were able to fund it. And y'all, that's where our Constitution was set up. I get tired of people all constantly saying we don't want the feds involved in our business. But let me tell you, everything we're doing right now in education, everything you do, the feds are in your business, and we don't want them to go away. So every dollar we send to DC, we're getting $3 back. There's other states that are giver states, we're a taker state. So please keep that in mind. And when Henry White runs for office, they're going to try to tag him and say he's for President Obama. Well, when I came up here, I couldn't see the reflectors because of my eye. That's not President Obama's fault, okay? That's my vision's fault. So Henry White has a voting record of his own, and check his own voting record out. I served with him. And I can tell you, he supports public education, and, you know, the Common Core issue needs to be decided on the education level.
All right,
Let me chime in.
go right ahead.
Governor Bentley, several years ago, I had an opportunity to speak with him. He said, I'm looking for some innovative ideas in education. I said, I've got one. He said, what is it? I said, why don't you listen to teachers and principals? I said, they're the only real experts in education. Well, I don't think he's followed that advice, but I sure do. Now, I could write on the head of a pen what I know about the ins and outs of Common Core. But I know some folks who do know it in and out. And to a person, they appreciate the Alabama College and Career Ready standards. And if you'll go on the Alabama, what is that?
Commission on Higher Education.
Alabama Commission on Higher Education. Go on their website, you can print this out. This is 360 high schools in the state of Alabama, every single one we got. And last fall, how many kids at each one of those high schools had to take remedial math and English? 30% of them had to be remediated. 14 high schools in this little neck of the woods. 1,880 kids went to college, 16% of them had to be remediated. And that's what we want to continue doing? I don't get it. I just don't get it. We need increased rigor. And every time that I've sat through these Tea Party meetings till I'm blue in the face, and you know, if we teach the Common Core, my child's gonna have a two-headed calf, and oh my Lord, I just heard all this stuff. I was back and forth, a dear friend of mine in Birmingham is a big Tea Party person, and she and I are great friends. I tell her, I said, you're smart, you're just crazy.
If I could add one other fact to it that I think is pretty interesting. When we looked at with the NAEP test, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, they give their assessment. We looked at our old ARMP, Alabama Reading and Math test. What we considered in the state of Alabama, those were our own homegrown standards. What we considered to be proficient in Alabama, meaning they could do it at grade level, was not, when you compared it to the national test, it wasn't one-to-one. What was proficient in Alabama nationally was not below basic, but it was below basic. So we had kids graduating from high school in the state of Alabama with a level of what we considered proficient. You cross state lines, and it is not, it's below basic. We had to do something about that. That's why we scrapped ARMP. That's why we got rid of the high school graduation exam. A lot of people ask about that because it wasn't telling kids anything. It was a test that was kind of arbitrary. They would pass it, but then still get to college and have to take remedial courses. There's no reason you should walk across the stage or walk across that football field in late May and you shake your hand and say, you passed these classes, you're ready, and then 2 months later you start college, you can't do the work. So it's the process of trying to get those aligned.
All right, we're gonna try to move on here. I'm gonna try to combine some of these questions together, at least topically, so, because I don't think we're gonna be able to get through all these questions on the time that we have available. I know in the last session, there was a lot of talk, and there was some legislation that was in regarding corporate tax rates, and particularly out-of-state corporations things. Question here, if we were to require the 50 Fortune 500 companies to pay their fair share in tax, how much revenue would that raise, and would that cover the $15 billion needed for RSA?
Yeah, those are my bills, yes, it would. The problem, and I'll get back to it, is that none of the Democratic bills were even brought up in committee. They weren't even brought up for debate, they weren't even allowed to be brought up in committee. So, that's the danger of a supermajority in Montgomery. Somebody asked me if I'd want a supermajority on the other side. No, I wouldn't. I believe in a balance. I believe that's when good things will happen. I used to be involved in mediation with State Farm before I went to the independent insurance world. And we'd sit down at a table with the opposing side on a claimant on an injury of a car accident. They would demand this amount, we would offer this amount. They'd demand this amount, we'd offer this amount. When everybody gets up and walks away from the table, and they don't feel like they won, but they don't feel like they lost, that's probably what should have happened. So what I'm telling you is that we need some of these bills, and we need your help, pressure your legislator to help bring these bills up in committee. Now I'm going to tell you, Representative Phil Williams and I serve on the House committee together. I can tell you, he's a supporter of public education. He's a Republican, and he's a good friend of mine. Phil does a good job of standing up for what's right, and he stands up for his district, and I stand up for mine. Lynn and I've known Lynn a long time, and we have some disagreements on some issues, but this isn't the problem up here. The problem's with the hierarchy and the leadership in Montgomery, and that's what needs to be challenged. Being a leader of a group in a legislative body doesn't mean you're a dictator. It means you're allowed to facilitate an organization operate the way it should. I'll go back to Speaker Seth Hammond, the way he used to do things. It was fair. He allowed everybody to bring their bills up in committee. They were able to be brought up for a debate and for a vote. I can count votes. I know when I'm going to go into a room to lose, but I'm going to give it my best shot. But all I want is a fair hearing. And when I can have a fair hearing, and I can have public educators come down to a public hearing and state the case, or have corporations come in and state their case, these independent companies in your area want these out-of-state corporations paying their fair shares, because it's penalizing them. And not only that, it'll help them succeed, and it'll also provide more money into the ETF.
All right.
Well,